Scholastic Audio presents Geronimo Stilton, The Phantom of the Subway by Geronimo Stilton. Read by Bill Lobley.
Terror in the Subway. Cheese niblets! The subway was chasing me! My heart was racing. My teeth were chattering. My ears were ringing. I woke up with a start. Phew! It was only a dream. That's right. I was safe and sound in my bed. My ears weren't ringing, but the phone was. I picked it up. Hello? Geronimo Stilton squeaking. My sister's shriek made me jump.
Geronimo! Get your tail to the office! Right now! It's important!
Thea yelled. I looked at the clock and leaped. What? 10 minutes past 9? I was terribly late. I'm on my way, I told my sister. But I was talking to a dial tone. One thing you should know about my sister. She's not the most patient mouse on the block. I jumped in the shower, brushed my teeth, and got dressed in record time. Then I rushed to the Singing Stone Plaza subway station. I was waiting for my train when I heard a horrifying sound.
Meow!
The crowd rushed for the stairs, squeaking in terror. A cat! There's a cat in the subway! I ran for the exit, too. It was bad enough I was late for work. I wasn't about to become some cat's breakfast sandwich. Rodents were pushing and shoving. I stood back. Oh, yes, I wanted to save my tail, but I didn't want to be crushed to a furry pulp. Just then, I noticed an elderly lady holding a young mouse by the paw.
Come on, Grandma!
The little mouse cried, but the old lady mouse was frozen with fear. Quickly, I grabbed her paw. Don't worry, madam, I yelled. Everything is going to be all right. I scooped up the young mouse. Then I led them both up the stairs. At last, we were outside.
Thank you! You are a true gentle mouse!
Squeaked the old lady gratefully. I smiled. Do you like to help others? I do. It makes me feel all warm inside. Sort of like when you eat a delicious bowl of hot cheddar soup. Thinking of soup reminded me that I had forgotten to eat breakfast. I was starving. I bought the little mouse a cheese ice cream. Then I had one too. Not my typical breakfast, but then this was not a typical morning. A phantom cat. I looked at my watch. It was 10 o'clock already. I had to get to the office right away. Oops! I almost forgot. I never introduced myself. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. I run the Rodents Gazette. It is the most popular newspaper here on Mouse Island. Now, let's see. Where was I? Oh, yes. I was on my way to the office. I decided to hail a taxi. When I arrived at the Gazette, I looked for my sister. Suddenly, I heard the roar of a motorcycle. The door flew open, and there she was. I groaned. Thea, how many times do I have to tell you? I squeaked. Don't ride your bike into my office. She just giggled. Then she parked her bike next to my desk.
Forget the bike, Jerry Berry!
She ordered.
I've got bigger news. It seems there's a humongous cat in the subway. It may even be a ghost. We absolutely have to beat the Daily Rat to the scoop.
I tried to tell Thea about the meowing in the subway, but she wasn't listening. Once my sister gets on a roll, there is no stopping her. She's like the Apollo Swiss cheese rocketing into space.
3, 2, 1, blast off!
Now she raced to the computer and started surfing the net.
Here it is!
She shrieked, making me jump. You should know another thing about my sister. She is very excitable. She began to read the latest news on the mysterious cat. It went something like this. On Monday, rodents reported smelling cat pee-pee at the Cheese Rhine subway station. On Tuesday, someone found strange cat-like scratches at the Scurry Hill station. On Wednesday, huge cat prints were found at the Nipple Drive station. On Thursday, horrified passengers spotted a cat's shadow at the Curly Fur Court station. On Friday, that's today, an awful cat's meowing was heard at the Singing Stone Plaza station. Rumor had it that the cat was a ghost. Yes, an honest-to-good mouse, horrible, horrifying, hideous ghost cat. I chewed my whiskers. Can you please stop using that word? I begged Thea. You know I am terribly afraid of cats. My sister snorted.
Geronimoid!
She smirked.
You are afraid of everything. In fact, if you were in a mouse, I'd call you a fraidy cat.
I felt faint with fear. My sister has no sympathy for a mouse of my delicate nature. Anyone for golf? At that moment, I noticed a fax coming in. It was a press bulletin. Inspector Clue-Rat closes the subway for safety reasons, it screamed. Thea twirled her tail.
I just have to know more,
she cried. She picked up the phone and began calling all of her big-shot friends. The mayor of New Mouse City, the chief of police, the city's top cheese inspector, the world's most famous detective, Hercule Poirot. She put down the receiver, looking disappointed.
Rats! This is just unbelievable! No one will tell me anything about the subway case,
she complained. By now, it was already late afternoon. Suddenly, an idea hit me. Did I tell you that I've taken up golf again? I said. My sister put her paws on her hips.
Geronimo! I'm talking about a huge scoop!
She grumbled.
And you're talking about golf! You are so foolish! You are so thick! You are such a cheesehead!
I rolled my eyes. Why did my sister love to pick on me? I was a good mouse. I never hurt anyone. Well, there was that one time when I accidentally ran over Uncle Nibble's tail with my car. But that's another story. For your information, Thea, I said, I happen to have just met Birdie Whiskers down at the golf club. My sister raised her eyebrows. I could tell she was impressed. That's because Birdie Whiskers was always in the news. He was a championship golfer. And besides winning tournaments, he also was the head of the entire subway system. I picked up the phone and called Birdie. I congratulated him on his latest game. Then I asked him about the mystery in the subway. Unfortunately, not even Birdie could talk to me. The investigation was top secret. I hung up with a deep sigh. Suddenly, my cousin Trap barreled through the door. Of course, he didn't bother to knock. I don't think he even knows how. Yes, that cousin of mine is one pushy mouse. In fact, his nickname is Pushy Paws. I stared at him now. He was loaded down with shopping bags. Have you heard the news? I am going to open my own bagel place, he shrieked. I'm going to call it Big Belly Bagels for Big-Bellied Rodents. What's up, Cousin Kins? Trap dumped his bags on my floor. Then he pulled the wrapper off a cheddar lollipop. What's up, Cousin Kins? He asked, plopping into my chair. He put his paws up on my desk. Then he started picking his snout. Do you mind? I squeaked. I shook my head in despair. Did I mention Trap can be a complete slob sometimes? It's a wonder we are related. He pulled the lollipop out of his mouth and burped.
Well, somebody forgot to take their anti-grouchy pill this morning,
he smirked. He stuck his sticky lollipop in his pocket. Then he began cleaning his teeth with a toothpick. By this time, I had had enough. I slammed my paw on my desk. Trap, can't you see we are busy? I burst out. We are working on a story about the Phantom in the subway. It's big news. His eyes grew wide.
Big news, huh?
He muttered, deep in thought. Then he grinned.
Don't worry, Germeister. I can handle this one, he said. Just sit back and watch a pro at work.
Before I could squeak, he grabbed the phone and started dialing.
I've got friends in all the right places, you see, he explained. Simpleton Smallpaw is the nephew of the dormouse for the building where the head of the entire New Mouse City Transit Authority lives. Yep, Simp and I play checkers together every week at the Telltale Tavern.
Seconds later, he was chatting away on the phone. First, he told some awful jokes. Then, he made some rude noises. Finally, he got down to business.
Listen, Simp, I'd love to blab all day, but I've got work to do. I need some info about that cat in the subway, he said.
10 minutes later, he hung up. A big smile spread across his face.
I know everything, he squeaked. Am I good, or what?
I tried not to roll my eyes. After all, I wanted to hear Trap's information. Still, it wasn't easy. I wanted to knock his paws off my desk. I wanted to throw his sticky lollipop out the window. But more than any of that, I wanted the scoop. Well, I asked in my nicest voice, what's the news? Beside me, Thea grabbed her notebook, pencil in paw. But instead of spilling the beans, my cousin just snickered. He twirled his tail, looking smug. Uh-oh, I thought. When Trap gets that look, it can mean only one thing. Trouble with a capital T. Secret information. I was right. Trap wasn't about to give his news away for free. He wanted to be paid.
I could use a few smackaroos, he said. I mean, I am opening up Big Belly Bagels, you know.
I should have known. Trap is always looking for money, and I am his favorite mousy bank.
Here is my offer,
my cousin went on.
I will give you the inside scoop on the cat in the subway. You will publish a special edition of the paper. Of course, it will make lots and lots of money. Then we will divide up the dough. 80% for me, 20% for you.
What? Are you crazy? I squeaked. I was fuming. What did I do to deserve such an obnoxious relative? He was so frustrating. He was so annoying. He was enough to drive a mouse up a clock. My cousin pretended to be shocked.
Listen, Jerry Berry, he squeaked. You're lucky I'm giving you any info at all. In fact, maybe I should just make a deal with Sally Ratmousen. I bet she'd hand over some cash to get the scoop on this cat.
I turned pale. Do you want to know why? Sally Ratmousen is my arch rival. She is the owner of The Daily Rat, my paper's biggest competition. You are such a penny pincher, Geronimo. I jumped to my paws. That's ridiculous, I screeched. You know Sally is my #1 enemy? Trap just sighed.
It's your own fault, Geronimoid, he insisted. If you weren't such a penny pincher, you'd have your story.
Penny pincher? I couldn't believe my ears. I am a lot of things. A scaredy mouse, a brainiac, a worrywart, but I am not a penny pincher. Every year, I give dozens of free books to the Rat Town Library, and on Christmas, I send 100 cheddar logs to the residents at the Creaky Mouse Nursing Home. Why, I would give my right paw for a rodent in need. I was so mad, I couldn't squeak. But it didn't matter. My sister had started screaming at Trap. Her ear-piercing squeak made my head pound. I was getting a mouse-sized headache. Right then, Pinky Pick marched into the room. One look at Pinky's face, and I realized that she had heard everything. Pinky Pick is my very young assistant editor. She is just 14 years old. She goes to school in the morning, then works for the Gazette in the afternoon. It's a deal. Pinky hopped up and down on her pink platform shoes.
Everyone, freeze!
She ordered. Thea stopped yelling at Trap. Trap stopped yelling at Thea. I stopped chewing my whiskers. All eyes turned to my assistant editor. Pinky is only a teenager, but she is not shy. In fact, she is the exact opposite. When that mouse starts squeaking, look out. She can talk the fur off a long-haired hamster.
Okay, here's the deal, she began. 1. Trap tells us everything he knows. 2. I tell you how to get by the police barricades in the subway. 3. Thea organizes the whole expedition. 4. And boss, you put up the dough.
She grinned and went on.
We'll divide the money among all 4 of us. That's 25% for everyone,
she finished. Trap groaned.
What? Equal shares?
He complained.
That doesn't sound fair.
Pinky twirled her tail.
Take it or leave it,
she squeaked cheerfully. For a moment, no one said a word. It was so quiet, you could have heard a sliver of Parmesan drop. Then, Trap stuck out his paw.
It's a deal,
he told Pinky. They shook paws. I could tell Trap wanted more money, but I could also tell something else. He was impressed with my tough-talking assistant. Who would guess a little mouse in pink shoes could be so pushy? A 500-pound feline? We got right down to work. Trap listed all of the new info he had received from Simpleton Smallpaw. 1. New cat scratches had been found on the Cheese Pop vending machine at Scurry Hill Station. 2. Crime Rat experts had examined the scratches. They concluded the cuts had been made by a 20-foot-tall cat who weighed more than 500 pounds. 3. At Cheese Rind Station, they found tufts of fur and a 10-foot-long cat whisker. 4. The catology expert from the Mouseum of Rodent History said the mysterious dark gray feline could be a gigantic specimen of colossal catitis. 5. A feline psychology professor was working on a top-secret trap for the subway cat. It involved a gigantic cage and 400 boxes of kitty crunchies. 4 super spicy pizzas. When Trap finished, Thea grabbed the phone. She dialed the number for Rats Authority, the best store in town for sporting goods.
Yes, I'll need 4 wetsuits, 4 pairs of rubber boots, 4 flashlights,
she ordered. The list went on and on. I sighed. I had a feeling this expedition was going to cost me more than a 5-course meal at Le Squeakerie, my favorite French restaurant. Trap used the phone next. He called the pizza place across from my office.
Hello? Send me 4 super spicy, super cheesy, super large, super expensive pizzas with everything on them. Right away!
I groaned. Did he have to add expensive? Even pizza can get pricey in a place like New Mouse City. He was about to hang up when he shouted one last order.
One more thing, he added. Make my cousin's pizza extra super spicy. He needs to strengthen his stomach.
I started to protest. Eating spicy food could kill me. I'm not kidding. One time, I accidentally ate a burrito at Hot Fur's Mexican Cantina. My stomach was messed up for months. I was still thinking about Hot Fur's when Thea grabbed my paw.
You're coming with us, Geronimo, aren't you?
She asked. I didn't say a word. There was no way I was going down into the subway's dark, spooky tunnels. Plus, I didn't want to come snout to snout with a gigantic cat. Well, actually, I feel like I might be getting a cold, I explained. Just then, Trap piped up.
My good friend Whiskers Malone told me that Sally Ratmousin is following the same hot trail. You wouldn't want her to beat us to the scoop, would you?
He announced. Rats! Just hearing Sally's name made my tail twitch. As terrified as I was about encountering the phantom cat, I knew I had to do it. I couldn't let that rotten Sally Ratmousin beat me at my own game. The Rodents Gazette had to get the story before the Daily Rat did. I'm in, I declared. I just hoped I wasn't in for trouble. Eat, drink, and be squeaky. Moments later, the doorbell rang. It was the pizza delivery. Trap ate his pizza in one gulp. He ate half of mine, too. Just looking at it gave me heartburn. Thea put film in her camera and stuffed it into her backpack. Trap stuffed his pack with food.
Eat, drink, and be squeaky,
he chuckled. The doorbell rang again. This time it was the delivery from Rats Authority. With a sigh, I put on my wetsuit and rubber boots. I pulled on a helmet with a flashlight attached to the brim. Across one shoulder, I had a sturdy rope with a hook on the end. I prayed no one would see me. I looked ridiculous. I mean, I don't have the body for adventure gear. Plus, I am a professional mouse. I like my suits and ties. At last we were ready for anything. At 8 o'clock, we left. It was almost dark outside. We looked more like burglars than journalists hunting for a scoop. Pinky took us to a narrow alley at the back of the fish market. She showed us a drain.
All the subway entrances have been closed by the police,
she said.
But we'll get in through this drain.
She held up a copy of a map.
We just follow this sewer pipe until we hit the number 7 line,
she explained. Trap stared at the map.
How did you get that?
He asked Pinky. I could tell he was impressed. Pinky sniggered.
Goofsnout Pete Goofus, my friend from school, made it for me. He is the assistant to New Mouse City's sewer control manager.
Suddenly, I realized what Pinky wanted us to do. I absolutely refuse to go down into the sewers, I squeaked. I am not a sewer rat. I am a respectable mouse. Trap rolled his eyes at me.
Well, I just call that fear,
he snorted.
F as in, what a fraidy mouse. E as in, enough with the drama. A as in, another silly excuse down the drain. R as in, really, Germeister, don't be such a wimp.
Then he added,
Just think about Sally. She may already be down there, stealing your scoop.
Thea removed the grating and went in first. Pinky went next. I groaned. I guess I had no choice. I had to go. I would never hear the end of it if Sally got the story. I followed Pinky's fading light. Trap insisted that he would go down last.
I want to make sure that Mr. Fraidy Mouse here doesn't scamper off,
He said.
It wouldn't surprise me. Even as a young mouselet, he was always running away from something.
I started to argue, but Thea stopped us.
Shh, she squeaked. Shut your snouts and get going.
Cat, 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 cat. It was dark under the streets. We climbed down an iron ladder, one paw step at a time. It was slippery, very slippery. I was glad to be wearing those ugly rubber boots. So what if I was a fashion victim? At least I wouldn't break my tail. The cold seeped through my fur. I sneezed. Achoo! I knew it. I've already caught a cold, I moaned. Trap snickered.
Poor Jerrykins has caught a coldykins,
He squeaked in a high-pitched voice. I would have yelled back, but I was too scared. Did I mention I'm afraid of heights? Down, down, down we climbed. Would this tunnel never end?
That's it.
Thea said at last. I rested my paws on the ground. What a relief. If only I could head home now. Instead, I looked around. We were on a very slippery, narrow pavement. A canal full of smelly sewage flowed to our left. Just then, Trap pointed to a spot behind me.
Geronimo, there's a cat behind you,
he cried. I shrieked in terror.
Ha ha, tricked you,
chuckled my cousin. I chewed my whiskers, fuming. Trap just snickered.
Lighten up, Jerry Berry, he advised.
He began dancing around me in a circle.
Put your paws in the air like you just don't care. Kick up your feet and dance to the beat,
he sang. I started to relax. Maybe Trap was right. Maybe I needed to stop worrying about everything. Maybe there really wasn't a phantom cat in the subway. Maybe it was just a silly story. Yes, that was probably it. A silly story made up by some bored mouse with lots of time on his paws. Just then, Trap leaned over and shrieked in my ear.
Meow! Meow, 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 meow!
I nearly jumped right out of my wetsuit. Why, oh why was my cousin so annoying? Cat doo-doo. Thea was busy studying Pinky's map.
It looks like we have almost reached the end of this pipe. That means we should be crossing the number 7 line soon,
she said.
Then we're off to Singing Stone Plaza, the beginning of the line.
We marched along slowly in the dark. Our flashlights made ghostly shadows on the walls. Suddenly, I slipped on a dark spot.
Gotta watch out for that cat doo-doo, Cousinkins,
Trap joked. I shuddered. The liquid flowing in the canal gave off a horrible stench.
It really smells like cat doo-doo, doesn't it, Geronimo?
My cousin chuckled. I ordered myself to stay calm. Please do not say that word again, I begged. Trap snickered.
What word, Jerrykins?
He giggled. When I didn't answer, he screeched. "What's wrong? Has the cat got your tongue?" I shuddered again. "Come on! Let the cat out of the bag, Geronimoid!" my cousin shrieked. Then he stuck his snout up to mine.
Gee, you look beat, Jerrykins.
"Maybe you should take a little cat nap." Finally, I snapped. "Enough! Enough!" I squeaked at the top of my lungs. My cousin looked shocked. You see, I am usually a pretty mild-mannered mouse. I don't like to make a big squeak about things. Still, even I have my limits. I mean, I'm a rodent, not a robot. I have feelings, too. I was sick of Trap teasing me. It was time for me to put my paw down. Yes, this was the moment of truth. The moment I had been waiting for since I was a young mouselet. I would finally put my cousin in his place. I cleared my throat. Then I gulped. 2 enormous yellow eyes had appeared out of nowhere. They glowed in the inky blackness. They were staring right at us. I let out a shriek of utter terror. "Help! It's the Phantom Cat!" I cried. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the cat was gone. How odd. Still, I heaved a sigh of relief. Seconds later, Trap was up to his old tricks. 3 times he pointed to a spot over my shoulder. "Geronimo! A cat!" he cried. But he was only teasing. We trudged on. Trap tried to trick me again, but I wasn't falling for it. When he yelled, "Cat!" I brushed him off. But this time, he had a strange look on his face. My heart leaped to my throat. Slowly, I turned around. Behind me loomed the shadow of a monstrous cat. Its claws shot out, reaching for us. Was this it? Was this how my life would end? Was I about to become just another dead rodent clogging up the drain? "Goodbye, mouse friends," I sobbed. Like a sewer rat. Just then, the shadow disappeared. No one moved. We were frozen with fear. Finally, we hid around a corner. Thea gave us half an hour's rest to pull ourselves together. Trap immediately began searching through his backpack. "This calls for some serious munching," he squeaked. Out of the bag came a cheddar pie, a bag of nachos, and a jar of mozzarella balls. This was followed by 3 large rolls, a pineapple cheesecake, and a box of mint jelly candies. My cousin opened a thermos and chugged down the contents. "Gotta love that pickled pepper tea," he spluttered, smacking his lips. He finished with some onion-flavored chewing gum. "It freshens the breath," he explained. Then he massaged his stomach and let out a loud burp. I know what you are thinking. How could such a sophisticated, civilized mouse like me be related to such an obnoxious, disgusting mouse? I have asked myself the same question many times. Unfortunately, I have not figured it out yet. Trap is definitely one of a kind. I was still thinking about my annoying relative when Thea's voice broke into my thoughts.
Okay, this is it,
she announced.
See that tunnel over there? That's where the number 7 line begins. But we'll have to cross this sewage canal to get there.
I stared at the canal. It was so dark. It was so smelly. I can't do it, I decided. Sorry, Thea, but I just can't cross over that sewage. My sister didn't blink an eye. In fact, she was already on her way.
Suit yourself,
she said over her shoulder. I ran after her. Wait! I shrieked. You can't just leave me here all alone. Thea put her paws on her hips.
Well then, come on, Fraidy Mouse,
She snorted.
I haven't got all day. Move your tail, or I'll tie it up in a knot.
What could I do? I followed with my tail between my paws. I was still scared, but at least I wasn't alone. Thea threw a rope across the canal. The metal hook on the end of the rope grabbed the ladder on the opposite side of the sewer. We crossed the canal, hanging from the rope. Luckily, it wasn't very deep. The stinking liquid barely reached our snouts. Still, the smell was enough to make any rodent lose his lunch. Ugh! I was glad I had only eaten 3 cheese balls. At last we made it to the other side. We had reached the number 7 line. The Chains of the Phantom Cat. Just then, a terrifying meow filled the tunnel. We heard chains clanking on the tracks. The Phantom Cat must be near. My heart was tap-dancing like Frankie Fastpaws on stage. Why, oh, why had I come along? Suddenly, it was silent again. At first, no one moved. We were all shaken. Then, Trap began digging through his pack. "A quick snack for courage," he explained. He pulled some bread and a small tube. He squeezed a disgusting paste onto the bread. "Extra strength garlic," he explained with a grin. We all leaped backward. The stench from that garlic was worse than the sewage. Crunchies, pulleys, jingle bells. We headed towards Singing Stone Plaza Station. It was tough going. We walked in single file along a narrow ledge. It was dark and spooky. The only sound was water dripping creepily from above. Plink, plink, plink.
Stay clear of the rails.
Thea warned us.
They are very dangerous. If you touch the 3rd rail, you're toast!
I shivered. My great-uncle Munchie had been struck by lightning in a rainstorm. His whiskers were completely fried off. Luckily, he hadn't lost his squeak. We finally reached the subway station. The platform was lit by powerful floodlights. This is where passengers waited for the trains. Right then, we heard voices. We hid inside a telephone booth. It was a tight squeeze. I could barely breathe. If only my big-bellied cousin hadn't eaten such a huge lunch. I peeked out of the booth. It was Inspector Clue Rat and his assistant.
We haven't found any paw prints, Inspector. Neither from a cat nor a mouse,
the assistant reported. Clue Rat muttered to himself. His assistant rambled on. He explained about the cat trap. The feline psychology professor had come up with a plan. It involved 400 boxes of Kitty Crunchies.
The Crunchies have been transferred to a giant box,
the assistant said.
The box will be shaken by a system of pulleys. Then, Inspector Darren Dimwhiskers, our colleague, will hide next to the box. He will ring a huge jingle bell to lure the cat. Isn't that a great idea?
Clue Rat looked like he was ready to explode.
Crunchies, pulleys, jingle bells,
he thundered. He twisted his tail up in a knot.
You call that a great idea? You call that a scientific method?
The inspector roared.
Well, I call that psychology professor a total cheese brain!
But his assistant wasn't finished yet.
Well, we also have a loudspeaker that can broadcast, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty."
The inspector just threw his paws in the air. Then he left in a huff. I watched him leave. That's when I noticed what a mess the subway had become. The benches were crooked. The floor was stained. The walls were covered in Graffiti. The subway system was built 50 years ago. Now it had 50 years' worth of wear and tear. I shook my head. This place needed more than just a few repairs. It needed a mega makeover. Show your snout. We were still in the phone booth when we heard more voices. One was a female's. It was loud. It was abrasive. Yes, I knew that voice well. It belonged to Sally Ratmousen, my #1 enemy.
I can't wait to beat the Rodents Gazette to this scoop, Sally snickered. That nitwit Stilton won't know what hit him.
I seethed with anger. Sally was with her editor-in-chief, Pawsley Pinhead. The poor mouse was examining the ground through his magnifying glass.
Move your tail, Pinhead, Sally shrieked.
Pawsley licked his whiskers. Sweat dripped down his fur.
Boss, may I go and get a cheese ice cream from the vending machine?
He mumbled. Sally thumped her tail.
Ice cream my paw! Start searching, Pinhead! I want some clues, and I want them right now! At once! Immediately!
Just then, I felt a sneeze coming on. Quick as a flash, Trap held my snout with his paw. Sally pricked up her ears.
I could swear I just heard Geronimo Stilton, she muttered. But, boss, we're the only ones down here, Pawsley insisted. Sally just pinched his ear. Get to work, Pinhead! She squeaked.
Suddenly, we heard a terrifying meowing. It was the Phantom Cat! Pawsley turned as pale as a piece of mozzarella.
I dare you to come out and show your ugly feline snout!
Sally shouted. As if in reply, the lights went off. So did Pawsley. He ran off in the dark. Sally ran after him.
Come back, you coward, or I'll fire you! She squeaked.
All because of a boot. Seconds later, the lights flicked on again. We crawled out of our hiding place. Thea began snapping pictures. Pinky took notes. All of a sudden, I spotted 2 yellow lights at the end of the tunnel. Was it the phantom feline again? No, this time it was a subway train. Just then, I heard someone shouting for help. I looked down. What was Trap doing down on the tracks? Had he spotted a half-eaten sandwich? I stretched out my paw to pull him out. Uh-oh. This was no laughing matter. Trap's boot was stuck in the metal grate. Slimy Swiss rolls! Shouted my cousin. I lowered myself from the platform, trying to keep away from the rails. I had to get that boot off my cousin. The train raced straight toward us. We're dead rats, cousinkins, Trap sobbed. So long, cruel world! Without a word, I began furiously undoing his boot. There were 12 hooks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12! With a sharp tug, Trap yanked his paw out of his boot. We leaped back onto the platform. Safe, and not a second to spare. Cat food. Thea and Pinky came running toward us.
Wow, boss, I was sure you were cat food,
Pinky cried. Oh, there was that word again. Why did everyone like to torture me? Thea held up her camera.
What a fur-raising escape, Geronimo! I've got it all on film!
She squeaked excitedly.
This could get me the prize for the year's most spectacular picture! Which reminds me, I am glad you made it.
I smiled. My sister likes to act cool, but I know she loves me deep down. Trap walked toward me, limping on his one boot.
Those were expensive boots, Germeister, he announced. Couldn't you have yanked a little harder?
Then he punched me in the arm. Hard. I tried not to wince. After all, I knew it was his way of saying thanks. He rubbed his belly.
That little experience made me hungry,
He squeaked.
How about we get some cheddar ice cream to celebrate our survival?
We headed toward the ice cream vending machine. Meanwhile, Thea and Pinky were deep in conversation.
I wonder who was driving that train,
Pinky said.
I don't believe in ghosts.
I heard Thea whisper.
Me neither.
Pinky agreed. A shiver ran up my tail. Was there really a ghost haunting the subway? I must admit, I was pretty spooked out. Just the thought of it made me want to jump out of my fur. I am not a brave mouse. In fact, my sister Thea says I'm the biggest fraidy mouse she knows. At the vending machine, I spotted something shiny on the floor. I picked it up. It was an antique silver ring shaped like a slice of cheese. Carved on the outside were the initials P.V. Follow those paw prints. Right then, I noticed something else. A strange stain spread across the floor. No, it wasn't a stain. It was some kind of print.
A paw print,
Trap declared.
It looks like the paw print of a mega huge cat.
I felt faint. Not the C word again. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't seem to escape it. Maybe it was time for a pair of earplugs. Thea snapped a picture of the paw print.
Look! There are more of them over there!
She squeaked. We followed the prints to the entrance of the number 1 line. The mysterious door. Was this the phantom feline's hiding place? I cringed. I wanted to run squeaking from the tunnel, but I didn't. I didn't want to leave without finding out the truth. Plus, I didn't want Thea to tie my tail up in knots. The paw prints led us deep into the dark tunnel. Then, suddenly, they stopped.
Look at this,
Pinky exclaimed.
the prince and right at this wall. If there really is a phantom cat, he could have walked right through the wall.
My fur broke out in a sweat. My whiskers trembled. It was all very strange and very scary. Cheese niblets! I needed a vacation, somewhere sunny and warm and happy. A terrifying sight snapped me out of my daydream. It was Pinky Pick. 1 minute she was doing tricks with her yo-yo, and the next minute she had disappeared.
Help!
We heard her shriek. We called her name, but she had vanished into thin air.
There must be a secret passage somewhere.
Thea decided. She shone her flashlight onto the wall. She examined each stone. Then she pressed one. 2 seconds later, she had disappeared too.
I guess we're next, Jerry Berry,
squeaked Trap. I was petrified, but I didn't want Trap to call me a scaredy mouse. Together, we pressed our paws on the wall. It moved. On the other side was total darkness.
Is that you, Geronimo?
Whispered my sister. She switched on her flashlight. We were at the top of a long staircase. It smelled like moldy blue cheese muffins. P.U. I hate stinky smells. Someone needed to use a mop and some Mr. Clean Rat in this place. Carefully, we made our way down the old steps. At the bottom was a gigantic oak door. It had an enormous keyhole and a huge key in it. Carved into the door were the initials P.V. Thea pushed the door open with her paw. Then she took the key out of the keyhole.
I think we'd better take this with us,
she declared.
Here, do something useful for a change, Geronimo.
She added, passing me the key. I wanted to point out that I was already carrying half her stuff. I had all of her extra film, her big fur brush, and 5 different types of nail files in case she broke a paw nail. But I didn't say a word. I was too scared to argue. I hooked the key to my belt. Then I followed the others. Concentrated cat pee-pee. On the other side of the door was a huge room. The architecture was magnificent. The ceiling was supported by huge columns. On each column sat a sculpture of a smiling mouse head. On the walls were paintings of scenes from The Great Cat War. How fabumouse, I breathed, my snout turned upward. Then I tripped. Did I mention I can be a bit of a klutz at times? Thea picked up the object I had fallen over. It was a jug labeled Concentrated Cat Pee-Pee.
So, this is where that stench came from,
my sister exclaimed.
I knew there was no phantom cat.
I noticed a row of jars and beakers lined up on a table. We were in some kind of laboratory. One jar seemed to be glowing in the dark.
I bet that's some kind of phosphorescent paint,
Pinky remarked.
The Phantom must use it to create special effects.
Just then, Trap found a switch on the wall.
I wonder what this does,
he muttered. He switched it on. A deafening
Meow!
filled the room. I jumped so high, I shook paws with the ceiling.
Calm down, Germeister. It's just a recording,
my cousin pointed out. Thea showed us a wall of video recorders.
Look, this is how the Phantom must keep an eye on everything. It's like his own personal security system,
she remarked. Meanwhile, Pinky had discovered a projector sitting on the floor. She switched it on. The shadow of a humongous cat appeared on the wall in front of us. This time, I didn't just shake paws with the ceiling. I kissed it. I couldn't help it. I knew the shadow wasn't from a real cat, but I was still scared. Trap rolled his eyes at me, but I didn't care. I had nothing to be ashamed of. After all, I am a mouse, and I do not like cats. What is this lever for? We continued to look around the laboratory. It was filled with lots of strange mechanical devices. I was checking out something that looked like an old jukebox when disaster struck.
What is this lever for?
Trap mumbled. Before you could say, squeak, he had pushed it. Suddenly, all the metal objects in the lab were drawn toward a huge magnet, including the big key that I had hooked to my belt. Soon, I was stuck to the magnet like cream on cheese. Help! I screamed. Get me down! Quiet as a mouse, Pinky hit the lever again. Everything hit the floor, including me. I landed right on my head. Rancid rat hairs, I moaned, rubbing my fur. I was going to have a lump the size of Mount Cheddar. Ah, it's a long story. Right then, the door flew open. We all turned around in surprise. An enormous mouse creature stood in the doorway. I gulped. No, it wasn't just any old creature. It was a cat! A cat who was 20 feet long and weighed 500 pounds! The head was huge, with pointed ears. The whiskers shook. The gold-speckled eyes looked cruel. In fact, they seemed to look right through us. My heart hammered away under my fur. My paws shook.
I was about to faint in front of a monster-sized cat. I tried giving myself a quick pep talk. Don't worry, Geronimo. It's not that bad, I told myself. Maybe he's a vegetarian. Maybe he just wants to borrow a cup of sugar. Maybe he's lonely. But I knew I was kidding myself. I mean, I'm not blind. I could tell this cat meant business. Still, there was something different about him. What was it? Maybe it was his eyes. They seemed so fixed and glassy. Or maybe it was his fur. It looked so fake. Just then, we heard a weird, whirring sound. The cat marched toward us with stiff, robot-like movements. Suddenly, he stood up on his hind paws. Then, he grabbed his own hairy head and pulled it off. My mouth dropped open in shock. But I was even more shocked at what happened next. A mouse slid out of the cat's body and calmly headed toward us. Then he wrapped me in a giant hug.
Geronimo Stilton, my old friend, he gushed. It's so good to see you again.
I could hardly believe my eyes. It was my dear friend, Professor Paws von Volt. Professor von Volt was a brilliant scientist and inventor. We had met on one of my many adventures. I introduced my sister, my cousin, and Pinky Pick to the professor. They shook paws.
It's so nice to meet all of you, said the professor. I feel like I already know you. You see, Geronimo is my favorite writer. I love reading his tales of adventure. They're so funny. I laugh my tail off.
I grinned. Professor von Volt is one of my biggest fans. I like to send him my latest books when they come out. But sometimes, finding the professor is like trying to find a whisker in a haystack. That's because the professor is never in one place for too long. He is always moving his laboratory from one spot to the next. That way, no one can steal his secret discoveries. I didn't know you had moved your laboratory, I told the professor. I am usually the only one to know each new address. The professor rubbed his head.
Oh dear, I'm sorry, Geronimo, he apologized. I've been so busy with my inventions, I completely forgot to call you.
No problem, I said, smiling. I wasn't surprised. The professor can be totally absent-minded. Once, he tried to build a house underwater. It was sort of like a square submarine with a chimney. The professor was so busy working on the outside of the house that he didn't notice a shark had moved inside. Talk about a scary house guest. The professor showed us some of his latest inventions. There was a super-powered automatic cheese grater, a paw massager, and a steam whisker curler.
Can I try?
Thea asked, picking up the curler. The machine let off a puff of steam.
Wow!
Thea cried, checking out her perfectly curled whiskers.
I have to buy one of these.
The professor chuckled.
This is only a sample, he explained. When I get a patent for it, I will send you one.
As usual, the professor's inventions were all incredible. But why had he created a giant robot cat?
It's a long story, the professor explained. Let me start at the beginning. My latest invention is... As a young mouselet, I loved to dig tunnels underground. I would dig tunnels to get to school. I would dig tunnels to get to my friends' mouse holes. I would dig tunnels to get to the cheese shop. When I grew up, my family sent me off to Radford. It is the most prestigious university on Mouse Island. I studied science, physics, chemistry, mathematics, history, medicine, and more. After I graduated, I was still fascinated with tunnels. I came up with a plan. New Mouse City had so much traffic. Why couldn't we build a transportation system under the ground? The mayor loved my plan. They started building right away. I helped, and that's when I made an important discovery. There is a network of secret rooms under the city, dating back to the Great Cat War. They were used for communication with the outside when the town was under attack. I decided to make one of the rooms into a hidden lab. Here, I can conduct my experiments on electromagnetic fields. There are no electrical sources underground to interfere. It's the ideal location.
I was impressed. Only a brilliant scientist like the professor would come up with such an amazing idea.
Would you like to see my latest invention?
The professor asked. We all nodded. He picked up a small box that looked like a remote control.
I call this the Voltinator. It allows me to move any object without even touching it,
Professor Von Volt said. He pointed the device at Trap. As if by magic, Trap rose into the air.
Look at me! I'm a bird! I'm a plane! I'm a flying mouse!
My cousin giggled. Professor Von Volt lowered him to the floor with great care.
I bet you can make a lot of dough with that thingy,
squeaked Trap. The professor nodded. Then he grew serious.
Last Sunday, someone discovered this lab, he said, and that got me thinking. What if the Voltinator fell into the wrong paws? It could be a total disaster. Maybe the world is not ready for my invention yet.
The professor had decided to move his laboratory once again. He had built the enormous robot cat to keep away intruders while he packed. We all listened to the professor's tale. The only sound was my cousin munching on an onion and cheese sandwich. At last, Pinky broke the silence.
So, you were the one driving the subway train, she remarked, and you projected those cat shadows on the walls.
Professor Von Volt held up his paw.
Guilty as charged, he admitted. But today I am leaving. You won't have to worry about the Phantom of the Subway anymore.
At that moment, the door swung open. Sally Ratmousen and Pawsley Pinhead barged into the room. Sally took one look at me and shrieked.
Stilton! What are you doing here?
She cried. Cross my paws. Professor Von Volt looked angry.
Well, Miss Ratmousen, did you forget something?
He smirked.
After all, this isn't your first visit to my lab, is it?
Sally turned pale. Then she put her paws on her hips.
Of course this is my first visit, she squeaked. I've never set eyes on this joint before. Cross my paws.
The professor shook his head. Then he switched on one of the machines.
This video was recorded last Sunday, he said. How do you explain this, Miss Ratmousen?
The recording showed Sally and Pawsley rummaging through the lab.
That's not me!
Sally squeaked.
I've been framed!
Professor Von Volt sighed.
I didn't just fall off the cheese truck, Miss Ratmousen, he snorted. You are a liar and a sneak. I can't have my experiments falling into the wrong paws.
He picked up a small suitcase and waved goodbye to us. I wondered where he would set up shop this time. In a grass hut? Under a lake? Somewhere in the Blue Cheese Mountains? You never knew with Professor Von Volt. Before he left, I gave him the silver ring I had found. Now I knew what those initials stood for. They stood for Paws Van Volt.
Thank you, Geronimo. This ring has been in our family for generations,
my friend beamed. At that moment, Sally raced over.
Listen, Volt, I'll pay you anything for those inventions. Anything you want,
She shrieked.
right now, at once, immediately.
When he didn't answer, Sally grabbed the professor by the tail.
You don't want this to get ugly, do you?
She hissed. Again, the professor didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the Voltinator. He used it to lift Sally into the air. Then he set her down on a chandelier. Sally was fuming. Uh-oh, I gulped. She looked madder than my Grandma One-Whisker when she found a mousetrap in her garden. With a terrifying squeak, Sally leaped onto the professor.
Give it up, Volt.
She yelled, reaching for the Voltinator.
With this thing, I'm gonna get rich, rich, rich! And then I'm gonna rule the world!
A picture flashed before my eyes. It was the front page of a newspaper. "Rotmausen to take over the world!" the headline screamed. "Right now! At once! Immediately!" Just then, the professor threw something onto the center of the floor. A yellowish fog filled the room. It smelled like cheese.
Don't worry,
my friend called as he raced away.
it's just a Swiss cheese smoke bomb. It won't hurt you.
After a while, we found our way out of the laboratory. Sally had a murderous look in her eyes.
You better watch your step, Volt.
She screamed to the empty hallway.
I'm gonna find you and steal all of your inventions one day.
But I knew she wouldn't. The professor was probably halfway to the Mouse Hamas in an invisible boat by now. Yep, Professor Paws Van Volt truly was one clever scientist. A scoop in the making. At last, the subway system was back to normal. Inspector Clue Rat closed the case. Rodents everywhere breathed a sigh of relief. 1 month later, I received a package in the mail. It had 1,000,000 stamps all over it. It must have come from very far away. Can you guess who it was from?
For Mr. Geronimo Stilton, publisher, The Rodents Gazette, 17, Swiss Cheese Center, New Mouse City, Mouse Island, 13131.
Yes, it was from my dear friend Professor Paws Van Volt. He had sent gifts. There was a steam whisker curler for Thea, an interactive yo-yo for Pinky, a pen with cheese-flavored ink for Trap. It was just perfect for a mouse like Trap. He always ends up eating his words. And for me? Well, there was a tube with several papers inside. I ripped open the letter attached to the tube. It read,
Dear Geronimo, please publish this letter of apology in your paper. I would like to tell all of the residents of New Mouse City that I am sorry for scaring them. In addition, I would like to pass along these plans I have drawn to restore the subway system. It is my gift to the city. Thank you again, Geronimo. You are a true gentle mouse. Yours sincerely, Paws Van Volt.
I smiled. Now here was a scoop worth squeaking about. I called my sister. Thea, we are still going to get our story, I announced. Prepare the front page headlines. Special edition. Paws Van Volt, the brilliant professor who designed New Mouse City's subway system, has presented the city with a renovation project. Turn to page 4 for all of the Fabumouse details. The special edition of the Rodents Gazette sold like hotcakes. I even received a call from Mouse Island's top movie company, Fur on Film. They wanted to make a movie about the Phantom and Professor Von Volt. They were offering a ton of money. Still, I didn't want to give away all of the professor's secrets. I turned down the offer. After all, I am a gentle mouse. My cousin was beside himself. "How could you, Jerry Berry?" he squeaked. "We could be rich! We could quit this rat race! We could be soaking up the sun on the Swiss Cheese Islands!" I just shook my head. I mean, some things are more important than money. I am a true gentle mouse. 6 months went by. One day, I received another letter from the professor. It said, "Dear Geronimo, I am about to leave on an exciting trip. I am doing an experiment on time travel. Would you like to join me? You could keep a diary. Then you could write a book about our adventure." The professor explained that we would go back to the time of the dinosaurs. And then... Oh, but that's another story. And another book. In his letter, the professor also gave me his new address. But it's a secret, of course. Yep, you can ask all you want, but I'm not squeaking. I promised the professor I wouldn't tell anyone. And, as I have already told you, I am a true gentle mouse.
We hope you have enjoyed this production of Geronimo Stilton, The Phantom of the Subway, by Geronimo Stilton, read by Bill Lobley. This program was produced and directed by Paul Rubin, executive producer Cheryl Smith, with music by Tom Marsh. Copyright 2000 by Edizioni PM SPA. English translation 2004 by Edizioni PM SPA. Production copyright 2007 Scholastic Inc. All rights reserved.